Ashley, did you discover community building as your creative medium or one of them? Because clearly businesses too. Or did you just look up one day and think, wow, I like this. I can do this. There's a need for it. Because I'm always so curious, like what comes first, as we find our ways to be in the world and be creative.
Yeah, wow. I love that question. I've never been asked that question. Thank you. Yay.
Yeah, you get to say something different because I know you're doing a lot of interviews.
I do think it's a combination of nature and nurture. I was reflecting a lot. I had a birthday last week.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good time for a reflection.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, growing up, I spent a lot of time, I was in musical theater. That was my world and what I went to school for. And I went to a lot of summer camps, and there's a lot of like interactive, fun community building, like playing different roles and going really deep with one another in a way that when I would go back into my, this summer would end and I go back into school, I'd be like, why aren't we connecting this way?
I love that. I love that. I did theater as a kid and then went to film school and did film. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't act. I was always the writer, director, that kind of thing. But yes, and then I always feel like there's such a human hunger. And yet the more and more digital we become, it feels harder and harder to get that.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like, and kind of part of why, I'm a non-technical founder of a tech company.
I love that.
Like, what? And I'm like, well, because when I think about this problem of why human beings aren't connected and therefore aren't feeling well, and, it all runs all the way to, the climate crisis. And I can go there, but
yes, please do, because the climate crisis is a big part of my work. So I would love to talk about it.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So, when I think about the world that social media and other technology platforms have played, and it's changed the way we talk to one another. It's so simple when we think about the performative nature, when we think about what it means to create an identity, to get liked, to not get liked, even like on-demand delivery and marketplaces, all of this technology has just shifted our ability to interact and spend time with one another, to make eye contact with one another. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely a motivating factor of technology is obviously not going away. So for me, creatively, I'm like, how can I use technology to bring people together in that way that I felt at summer camp, or I felt in that musical together? So that's a huge part of my motivation.
Well, walk me through musical theater to quilt. I mean, because one of the things I'm fascinated with, and we do get to talk about on the show from time to time, is that journey of I thought I was going here, and I ended up.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to Las Vegas, and I ended up in.
Yeah, no, I think I've surprised everyone. My mom will keep asking me, like, so what do you do?
I get that too.
Trying to find out. And, I started in ballet when I was 3. I come from a very musical family, and in a weird way, performing was normal. Like, mm-hmm. And so to go into tech, that was like that was the confusing thing. So I went to NYU for drama, for film, and for psych. And when I came out, I was auditioning and, kind of on that, just that mm-hmm. rat race of trying to prove myself and be worthy and be chosen, and feeling pains of rejection daily as a 21-year-old, in New York City with $0 in my bank account, and figuring out like what 12 jobs I could have to pay my, just the dream.
You were living the dream.
And for anyone here, that was sarcasm. So I ended up actually falling into this very bizarre, at the time, bizarre opportunity to work at a startup for matchmaking. And that was more interesting to me than bartending. I mean, I go to bed at 9 p.m. so we could, I was like, I'm the worst.
You're a night owl.
I'm the worst option for a bartender. And I ended up, I'll kind of cut through it, but I ended up falling deeply in love with this work of matchmaking. It worked for me. I was like a little bit of a case study at the time. So I dated somebody I was blind set up with for a few years. And then I wanted to help everyone find love in this way. There was such a thoughtfulness to bringing people together. And that was, I spent 5 years as a matchmaker. I then started my own matchmaking company, and it just became obsessed with all of the unique ways I could bring people together. It could be 2 people, it could be 16-person dinner party, but it turned my mind on in a way. And I realized, coming back to this question around community building as creativity, right? Like, I felt so creatively inspired and aligned when I got to think intuitively about people I've spent time with now, these people that were looking for love, and imagine them with someone and be able to play that role. And honestly, I kind of forgot about auditioning because I was so lit up by this other thing that it was not fun to think about dancing and singing and acting as the thing that was going to make me money. I mean, I have a ukulele behind me. I still do it all, you know. But I just realized that, like, those feelings of rejection and worthiness was really hard as an early 20 something. And now I found this thing I'm great at, that's driving people's like impact in their lives, improving their lives. They're happier. And I couldn't stop. It was the thing I wanted to keep doing.
I met my husband on Match.com.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And his sister met her husband on Match.
Oh wow. Yeah.
We've always told his mom she needs to make commercials for Match. Totally. Was it hard to leave the identity? I mean, I have a slightly similar story in that I wanted to be a filmmaker and then really had a very difficult time in the industry and ended up writing my first book in a really dark night of the soul. Just so unhappy. And it was so hard for me to let go of the identity of I'm going to be a screenwriter, filmmaker. It almost killed me. Now, once I let go of it, I was like, hallelujah. Yeah. But was it hard for you, or was it this just like you found this signature theme that had been there all along, you know, and it carried you through?
That's another big question you're asking. Here's a Post-it note I keep on my.
Oh my gosh. Everybody says explore identity if you're not watching the YouTube.
Yeah. And another big reflection I had last week was how I have been someone who's been quite comfortable in shedding my identity. Like, I kind of wake up every day and I'm like, I'm new. And I've been programmed that way, but I also feel like the thing I've really thought about as a woman is how much my identity growing up was projected onto me. You know, like blonde, white. I mean, who I you know, kind of look
tall, beautiful,
look like a Barbie doll. You know what I mean? And that's the image of like what a woman should look like. And I've always hated that. And so I've gone through my own, like, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to stand out, not wanting to have attention. And the height of that was in the moment when I was auditioning and spending 90 minutes a day getting ready and 2 hours at the gym to show up to like get asked to play the bimbo. And it's just like, I know there's so much more depth to me as a human being. I don't want to be seen as this person. And so I'm in this place in my life now where I'm falling back in love with who I am and what I look like, and being comfortable with my like kind of dark Mediterranean eyes and just like all of the things that I wasn't excited to be for so many years of my life. So I think I was really excited to have an identity where people would respect me for my intelligence and my inner authority, and not what I look like.
And that then makes it makes so much sense. There's so much there that my whole body's just going, one is that one of the things I'm obsessed with for women is how we have to separate from the patriarchal structures and what is projected onto us, what is woven into us, how our brains have been conditioned if we're going to claim our creativity. And so I love that you were able to reflect on that and use it for your own empowerment. A slightly dated word, but I didn't think of anything better there in the moment.
Yeah.
But I also love how that plays into that Instagram picture that went viral.
I mean, it was a really big, those were the first pictures I allowed to have like professionally taken of me in a really, really, really long time.
Fascinating.
And it was like, okay, there are no pictures where like all of the other pictures had me with long hair and outfits that just like didn't feel right. You could tell it was like Ashley trying to fit in for so many years. And meanwhile, I've like chopped my hair off. Like I feel good in the clothes I'm wearing and, you know, and all of that stuff. And this is who I want to present as.
Yeah, and I love that you were out on a run or exercising or something, and you had that idea to post one of those pictures and put female founder, right, and cross out female. Was that it?
Yeah, it was, you know, about 3 weeks prior, the rebirth or transformation of Quilt was announced on TechCrunch, and we raised venture funding. Everyone's really excited about it. You know, you submit photos, and the picture that was taken to put kind of at the top of that thing was this like fierce image of me, right?
Yeah, it is a fierce image.
And I got to pick that outfit, you know, and I picked the leather pants and the black blazer, you know, and like I put a little pin on it that said cosmic because we are cosmic, you know, and I was like, this is me. Okay, cool. And then here's this image like spreading across digital, you know, platforms and getting posted and responded to. And I was like, whoa, like I haven't been responded to in that way. A lot of messages that were like, you look great. And I was like, I just raised $3.5 million. What about
Can we talk about that and not what I look like?
And people didn't, you know, it's just, we are all conditioned to pay attention to the wrong things.
Yeah, we are. And some of it is our biology and it's hard to override. But I've been thinking about this so much, Ashley, because I wonder about women. I find myself uncomfortable with women who lead with their beauty to sell their personal brands. I think about it more, and your brand is of course much bigger. You're one of the figureheads, but it is a whole.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just you and
yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there who like because they're attractive or beautiful. I was thinking about this on Instagram. You know, the blonde, and not there's anything wrong with being blonde. Blonde is great. You know, but like, how is it okay that we use this? Do we use it because we can? Are we subverting things when we use it? Are we playing along?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you said the word patriarchy, right? It is a system where it's the only part of the system where we technically can get ahead is looks. Right. I've often thought about the jobs and opportunities I had in my 20s and if I would have had them or not because of how I look. I know I wouldn't have had them if I couldn't do the job. Right. Sure. So I know that like I could sit down and talk and sell ice to an Eskimo and inspire people to say yes. Like I knew that. But if I could just do that and not present as the part, would I have gotten, you know, and the amount of time spent on that. So we are essentially taught that our greatest superpower is our physical bodies.
And then our ability to be nice.
Yeah. And submissive, nice,
right.
that never, I mean, I'm nice, but I'm not submissive. So that was always confusing. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing. So I've gone through my own judgment of being like, man, I really wish that she didn't feel like she had to do that to do that. And then I'm like, you know, I don't know what's going on in her head, you know, and that's her journey. And I have deep compassion for mine because that's really me like wanting to heal this wound that I will only get ahead by doing that. And so put that post together to say, I'm a founder, right? Treat me like a founder. You know, I want us all to be able to identify as how we want to identify, not how someone tells me I should identify. Coming back to identity, it is my choice to say in this moment, I identify most as a founder, which for me is really defined as being a creator, creating things for people that they need. And so, you know, somebody next to me who wants to be a female founder and that's empowering to her, and dressing up and taking pictures and putting them out there is empowering to her. I support it as if it's coming from a place of choice, agency, and power, I guess.
I like that. That gives me a lot to think about for my own judgments that I have.
I mean, we're human, right? We judge the things that we have the hardest time with ourselves.
Yeah. So let's talk about Quilt.
Okay.
Why the name Quilt? Can you explain what it is? I have a terrible time, everybody on this podcast, as y'all know, of just like jumping in, and then people are like, but you never told me what the thing was.
That's amazing. Wow, quilt is such a metaphor. You know, one of my
It's a beautiful metaphor. I really like it as a name.
Thank you. I mean, Quilt today it's a social wellness platform. So it inspires people to come together, to be in community, to create communities who are going through change, who are curious about new things, and who really can benefit, as we all can, by being in conversation with others that is welcoming, that is kind, that is authentic. You know, all other places we go out in the world is, again, about performance, about having an agenda, about, you know, coming together to get something and to get ahead. And this is really a space to heal, to grow, and everything in between. And, you know, when I think about the word quilt, I think about mending too. I think about
I like that.
ability to mend. And as humanity, as humans go, particularly now, but well before the pandemic, the crisis of humanity, of human beings who are like, we're struggling, mental health and physical, like our overall well-being is on such a decline. And I genuinely believe that the greatest form of self-care is coming together with human beings, not being judged, being in conversation, laughing, crying, expressing oneself. And that's Quilt. You come to Quilt for that. The name Quilt, you know, quilting circles, quilt bees, it's cultural, it spans all cultures, you know, it's a format, it's a structure of coming together, of creating something, of being resourceful, of keeping each other safe and warm, of, you know, patterns and colors and, you know, and all the things. So the name just is so universally aligned to what it is we do.
Take me into the moment when you had to pivot from the original version of Quilt to what it is now, because I had a bad day yesterday. I just some projects, I'm not sure they're going to work. And I was feeling just really starting to go down into that I suck place. And I got my head on straight running this morning, and, you know, just don't make don't make the bad bet over and over again in your head. You know, don't just keep replacing that. You suck. But I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about this interview, and I was thinking about how did you handle that as a company? How did you handle it emotionally, personally? Plus, like, irony of ironies, you're isolated while you're having to do this, right? And you're all about community and connection and building connection.
Yeah, you know, it's it definitely, I experienced grief for sure, in a way that I don't feel like I've experienced grief before. You know, I've always empathetically understood it, but this was big for me. I was like, okay, like, I'm shedding identity, letting go a part of myself that I'm confident and comfortable in, because I've been building offline community for so long. I know how to do that. And now offline is gone. And now I'm just building a tech company, and I don't know how to do that. So the fearful feelings around doing that and doing that well, and in relation and comparison to everyone else who's been doing it, who's maybe up in Silicon Valley, has that network, does those things, you know, I was like, oh no, okay. So yes, that voice is coming up. The other voice was, you know, I've always seen quilts or quilting as this daily practice, like meditation. We need to be in community daily. You know, whether that's, I don't know, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, we will feel better if we do that. And I believe that, I know that.
It's true. I live in a neighborhood, and we're all about community. And I think of it as like I go out for and I walk my dogs to connect with people because I want to and I love them, but also for my I'm like I check it, I kind of mentally check it off for my mental health. Like I got out of my office today. I talked to human beings that I care about
Yep. Yep.
in
So,
person.
so important. And so there's silver lining of the forced constraint where I had to reimagine Quilt. I got to realize like it was time to. I
What
spent a couple of years building Quilt. Thousands of people opened their homes, had intimate conversations out of their homes. That was great. But there was something that was always bothering me about that model, which was it feels more like an event platform than a proper community. This instant access to support and connection. And so technology was a beautiful answer to that. It was absolutely scary. The bank account was dwindling. The reason to make money had gone away. I kind of had to. I went up into the mountains. I did spend a lot of alone time, and I did really do a lot of long walks and thinking about like what is the most frictionless way to quilt, where quilting is this coming together for this type of
That's a
communication.
great question. That's a great way to tee up
Yep.
thinking about.
Yep.
It's brilliant, Ashley, because yeah, really, because first of all, you're connected to the mission of what you're creating. You haven't thrown that out. One of the things I see in myself and clients is, and I totally admit to doing this myself, is throwing too much out when you are forced into that moment of like, oh, holy moly. And you didn't, like you sounded like you were still deeply committed to what the mission of Quilt is.
Yeah, I keep saying that. I mean, the purpose doesn't go. I was born with a purpose, like
Mm.
wanting to inspire and heal people and bring them together.
That doesn't change. That's what I call a
That's
signature theme, right? It just doesn't change. It just takes
doesn't go
different
anywhere.
forms. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
go
yeah.
anywhere.
Universe created me to do something here, and it's that. So
Mhm.
whether I'm performing, I'm doing that. Whether I'm matchmaking, I'm doing that. Whether I'm hosting a dinner party, I'm doing that. Whether like quilting, I'm doing that. So how to do it, how to accomplish, healing humanity to build a better world so we can feel good and start taking care of the planet we're living on. That's the same this whole time. So
Back to sorry, I got so excited. Back to the question.
that that overpowered the fear of
Oh,
not knowing how to.
brilliant.
But I felt both at the same time, and we can
Sure.
feel two feelings at one time. And I learned that last year.
Yes, you can, if you allow yourself
Yeah,
to. Yeah. So that's brilliant. Let's talk a little bit about how Quilt connects to the climate crisis. One of my projects is called Create Plus Climate, and I'm all about trying to get creatives to think about how they can use their voice and their talents to speak up in different ways. So the last thing I sent out was how to talk to reporters about how they're reporting extreme weather events. We're still stuck 5 years ago on how the stories are being told. And I really do believe that how we tell the stories and how we raise people's consciousness without freaking them out, because then they fall into despair and then they don't take any actions. There's no point, why bother? The title of my book, but it's not about climate change really.
yeah.
So how does Quilt help with that, or how do you see it, or how do you envision it in the future?
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I'm so happy to hear that you do that because I agree. Culture creates our reality, and storytelling is the most profound way to shift our reality.
I so agree. I mean, sometimes I feel like such a little wimp because I want to be the climate scientist but I live with a scientist and he will agree. The data is really important, but not if people can't understand it, and not if they can't take it into their hearts, and not if they can't see how they can have agency
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Quilt is a conversation platform. It's inspiring us to have healthy conversations, to rehabilitate the conversations that we have with ourselves and with others. So we are a storytelling platform. We are a social network. Those conversations is technically social media. I mean, we're taking the me out of social media. It's more about the we, but like as a tagline, but coming together and having these conversations. So on a very basic level, we have plenty of people who are working in the climate change, climate crisis, kind of our scientists, our investors, are, deeply working in levels of sustainability. And so that's kind of one area. And on a really deep level, I feel like I'm going to go there for a second, but I feel like all human beings have trauma that we're healing, right? And by trauma, I mean that we've went through things, whether it was as a child or as a young adult or now, that we did and went through alone. And that disconnected us from realizing like how connected we are to the planet we're on, to caring for others, things like love and abundance and collaboration. We don't live in a system that supports that. We live in a system that's more about fear and scarcity and competition and getting ahead. And so in that mindset, we don't believe we are one with nature. And we don't care about it. It's all about being a culture of self and being super self-serving. Quilt for me is reframing and training how to heal those parts of ourselves, come together and build a culture of belonging where we start to come up with new systems and bring that energy out into the world and inspire others to do the same. So I think, a planet that is sick because of the people that are on it, that are participating in or creating the systems that are hurting it in the first place.
Yeah, I was listening to Emily Atkins, the creator of the newsletter Heated on CNN a couple days ago. And this will be, when you all listen to this will be many weeks ago, maybe, that she was on CNN, depending on, I don't know what our air date is. And she said, it's a story, the climate crisis story is a story of corruption. It's a story of corruption. It is 40 years of the oil and gas companies lying. And we've been hoodwinked to participate in that system. But it takes so much courage, I think, and inner resourcefulness to be able to face what's happening. And I think that's part of the reason I was having these last few bad days, because when you start working I've done climate activism for decades, but it gets you down. And so I think one of the things that Quilt does too is help people be able to face into those truths because they feel supported. They don't feel alone. Like you said earlier, like that's the key. We have to not feel alone, whether it's in our creative lives or our activism or our mental health struggles.
Yeah, I was thinking about this on 4th of July. I was thinking about America as a brand.
I love the way your mind works.
I just was. I live in Los Angeles. The beaches were flooded with raging parties, and I was wondering what we were celebrating and why we were celebrating it. And I was sad and frustrated and thinking about the brand the biggest brand we've fallen into. And yeah, that was, I am, in many ways, I'm so grateful to live here. And in many ways, I'm so frustrated and sad to live here. And that's the inner conflict of like where to go and what to trust. I grew up thinking milk was good for my bones. And then it came out, it's not, like everyone's got an agenda, and like I'm watching it from such a young age. So thinking about that, I do feel really hopeful in the generation that we're in right now and kind of the awakening of information and misinformation and the power that technology can have on shifting our realities and perceptions and coming together and having this conversation as a form of media too. Like this is really big. There's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, it's very hopeful. I agree. So misinformation, being kind to each other. So people come to Quilt and they have audio conversations. It's audio only, which I love when we talk about identity and looks and all the things we were talking about earlier. Like that there's a beautiful privacy to that. At the same time, it's in real time so that that connection is happening. But how do you mediate if someone isn't kind or is giving this information or isn't being in a healing space with the other people who show up?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it starts early. It starts from the intent in the moment someone is coming on. You know, I mean, we do things like phone authorization and all of the things to kind of make sure that somebody coming in is a real identity.
Okay, so no trolls, no.
Yeah, and we have very, I mean, you can go to our wearequilt.com. The community guidelines are really clear and really specific, but they're only as strong as how you're enforcing them, policing them, and what you're doing. And so, yes, technology plays an important role in that, making sure that you have the tools and the features to use in order to like flag someone, report someone, block someone, write in, do it, you know, give a little bit of a heads up, which we've prioritized sooner than most companies. Most companies will get to
that was an understatement. That just not almost like almost made me snort.
Yeah. I really try to stay above board on that stuff. But yeah, most 99.9% of companies will wait until they're in the millions to build some of the features that we have in the thousands. Because I really genuinely believe you cannot retroactively create.
No, you can't. You're right. It's culture. It's a culture issue again. It's the brand of America. It's how hard it is to retroactively change a culture. My husband and I talk about this all the time.
It's really hard to do that. And so we have invested in and chosen to grow slowly so that every human being on the platform understands the values, understands what it means when you're living the values and when you're not living the values. And yes, we're building the technology and support, the tools to drive kind of agency, but the community, we have a really strong ambassador program. You know, I'm doing the things I did as a community organizer offline, and I'm using those tools and those modalities that I know work and investing in them in the social network that we're in. So all forms of moderation come from the community, not a third-party platform, not a huge team sitting behind like the Wizard of Oz, you know what I mean? Like it's the community. And so we spend a lot of time having conversations, interacting, educating, and investing in the community so that we understand what healthy looks like and what not okay looks like and everything kind of in between.
How much time do you spend in conversation with people on the platform?
Hours a week. You know, I host a few times a week. My favorite thing is to go to others, you know. Sometimes
does it change things when you show up because you're like the head of the whole thing?
Yeah, I think it does. And so I would go into every single one if I could just be listening and learning, but I'm aware, you know, I've walked. I mean, I think of it as like every quilt is a home, you know.
Yes. And also that's how our bodies work, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm getting ready, I'm walking in.
Yeah.
You know, and I've gone in before where someone who's hosting or speaking has said like, Ashley's here, I'm nervous now. And I'm like, I didn't mean that, you know? So sometimes I have to, sometimes someone on the team is in and I'm like, what are they saying? You know, and I'm getting really nosy, but I quilt as much as I can. Quilt.
I love how you've turned it into a verb. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's an action, you know, like love. It is. Yeah, so.
What's your dream for Quilt?
My dream is that people use Quilt to feel better. That they know that if they had a fight with a sibling or a loved one, family member, if they got great news, if they were like curious to explore something new, that the first thought that they would have is, I'm going to go to Quilt and talk about it. And I think that if everyone left feeling better than when they came on, that at a global scale is just like incredibly transformative.
I love that. What do you do for your own self-care besides quilt?
Yeah. This is an ongoing thing I'm learning. I think I'm so, gosh, I think I'm so in love with quilt because I'm creating it for myself in this like,
Yeah.
a very full circle kind of thing. I walk a lot. I sometimes forget that the answer is not always in my computer. But I walk and I get out into nature, and I love yoga. I love, which I feel like I just said all of the like very classic things. I take a lot of baths. Like I take a bath before I go to bed at night. But genuinely, the big shift I've taken, because all of those things could be done alone, which is great. But I have friends I laugh with a lot, and in laughter, it's like the greatest elevator on the planet.
It really is. It's so true. We had dinner with some friends last weekend and we laughed a lot and we walked home going, God, that felt good. One friend was really, sometimes people are really on, and he was doing all these funny like accents and making fun of his wife's Australian accent. And it was just, totally silly. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And one of the things that I've been fascinated since starting writing about self-care 30 years ago, is that it is very innocuous when we talk about it. It rarely sounds exciting or unique. And I think that's part of what can be dangerous about self-care, is that we think it has to be big or expensive or sexy. And it's
another brand.
Another brand.
Branded.
I know, it got so branded, and watching that happen has been so troubling to me, because I think most self-care is incredibly boring and difficult to do. Like, I haven't taken my vitamins today. I am not like, whoa, I get to take my vitamins.
So exciting.
So exciting, so sexy.
Yeah, it's a good point. I have gone to therapy every week since I was like 13 years old.
Wow, that is an incredible practice.
I remember going to my mom and saying, like, I want to go to therapy. Like, we've got a lot going on here and I want to go to therapy, and I love therapy. I want to like get in there and figure out what's going on. And so it can be hard, and crying can be tough. And then I'll jump back into my workday, and that wasn't smart. I should have like scheduled it at a different time. But that time for ourselves to like raise our awareness and have reflection and be really honest about us instead of what's going on with everyone else, I do think that has the greatest benefit long term. That type of work is the greatest benefit long term for overall self-care.
Yeah, which really just is a more pointed point about self-care, is not only is it rarely sexy, but it can be really hard work. Like going for my run this morning, like, yeah, I don't really want to go for a run, but I'm like, that's the only way it's going to happen. You're going to be in such a better mood. You're going to have so much more energy, and you're going to get out there with music, and it's a beautiful morning, and you're going to remember, right? But I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be done with it.
I don't want that feeling afterwards.
Exactly. Just like you want the feeling of having, gone through your feelings and understanding and come out the other side from therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do to fill your creative self up so you can keep leading Quilt?
It's definitely me in nature. Even yesterday, like I walked and I sat on the beach and I watched the sunset, and I really was able to connect back. That's where I can connect up to kind of like my source and purpose, and creativity for sure comes from like that for me. So anything in that vein, definitely. Usually I'll just play some like Robin and like dance. I love dancing.
Dancing, definitely top of my list.
I'll belt a musical, like I posted on social media yesterday, like who else like secretly or not so secretly wants to start singing musicals with me? And I got like so many responses. I thought I was going to get like one. It was like, me. I was like, yes. You know, like I get the body tingles, you know, when you connect, like something that's just so dramatic and fun. So things that I feel like my creativity comes from either like going inwards in nature and just being still with myself without distraction, or in being incredibly expressive, like outside of comfort zone, no one's watching, expressive kind of stuff.
Those are great. Those are great. I like to ask this last question of my guests. What do you want to learn next?
I am at the stage of my journey in my body, like this body, you know, I've talked on here about not loving it, you know, and, you know, growing up and in my 20s and hiding it. And, you know, that's led to a lot of kind of interesting body ailments and aches and pains. And I'm in the place right now where I really want to learn how to listen to my body, like to feel really connected to it, a lot of like somatic work. Yeah, not just be like, oh, this body, it's okay that like my left ear hurts from stress for a month. Like it's not okay, right? So what is my body telling me? So and maybe the less kind of spiritual answer is leadership. I'm defining who I am as a leader, and what I'm redefining what it means to be a founder. You know, I'm a venture-backed tech company, all the things. And I've spent some time thinking a leader looks like that person, that person, that person, and it doesn't, you know, it comes from what is authentic to me. And so I'm spending time really thinking about what leadership looks like, this term leaderful, which is more around bringing people together to lead, and building that company culture.
Well, I think that is a deeply creative act, and that I trust that you are going to listen to your style and your signature theme of bringing people together and become a powerful, authentic leader.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much.